It's recording. So, Michael Haynes, welcome on to the Sales Culture Podcast. I am excited to really talk to you today, man, because there's so much I'm going to learn myself and so much I think that you're going to add value to the actual audience today about how little guys like myself, people that have these huge dreams, but we're
Yeah,
just startups, right? you know,
yeah,
it's just a couple guys in the basement or in a
yes.
hotel room, you know, trying to figure out how do we scale our businesses, how do we grow it, and how do we get into this B2B lane. And you
Yes.
are an expert, so welcome on to the show.
Great. Thanks for having me, Joe. Lots of opportunity in B2B. I really am passionate about helping our peeps of startups and SMEs, SMBs, how they can thrive and succeed in the big end of town, big B2B. Joe, the world has really changed. There used to be that saying, no one gets fired for hiring IBM. Those
Yeah,
days are pretty much over now. A
yeah,
lot of the big folks in IBM and those big companies generally have gone down the tried and true of big firms, and they've often not gotten what the great return on investment, haven't received the outcomes that they've needed to have. I myself have been an independent consultant since 2011. My very first gig was because, well, one of the big end of town, big end firms remain nameless, didn't deliver so well.
mm,
So the global marketing director is like, well, I've tried big end of town. That didn't work out well. Let me try, go smaller niche. And there's a more recognition of that now, that if you really understand how to navigate the world of B2B, business buyers are really open now to working with niche providers, those that have the expertise, the hunger that will really deliver for them.
yeah,
Um, and there's been some studies, Joe, that have just been done recently by some big firms over in your end of the States. And they have found that over 70% of business buyers are looking for B2B product and service providers that understand their company and that are willing to help them achieve their problems and objectives. So if you really can double down on that and focus in on that, the door is wide open now. So there's really, if you really understand B2B, how to navigate, understand the role and the importance of delivering to the buyer
yeah.
specifically, which is something I'm very keen and passionate on, then the sky's the limit for all of us now.
So I mean, man, just the fact that you've been in the game since 2011, that's impressive. First off, hats off to you. How much has changed with the space? I mean, obviously, because I would imagine just with the whole internet coming in, taking us by storm, lowered the cost for a lot of us to operate. I know for myself for sure, but how's that space evolved over the past 10 years?
So Joe, yes. So it has changed a lot since 2011. The internet has, on some levels, made it easier for more of us to get into the game.
Mm-hmm.
It has also resulted that it's also much harder to get cut through,
Hmm.
and you have to make a lot more investment now. If you want to build, grow, and scale your business, you've got to be prepared to spend more. Even from a marketing perspective now, your marketing expenditure is going to be a lot more now. If you're running a business, even if it's as a side hustle, if you're going to have a site that's commercial, you must do SEO. You need to have professionals doing the SEO and SEO management because there's all the technical ends and there's just so much involved. It's a science in and of itself. So you're going to have to invest in that now. In my part of the world here in Australia, for small medium businesses, you're paying between $800 to $1,000 a month to have SEO, but you need to have it. You don't have SEO, you don't have any visibility.
Hmm.
Generally, they're finding now that for us as small medium businesses and businesses generally, you have to spend a lot more on marketing now to get cut through. Video marketing is quite important, but then that means you have to spend on equipment, editing, etc. So it's easier in one sense to get access, but it just means the level of investment to get the cut through, to get the results. You just have to do more, and you have to go further, and you have to be prepared to have more skin in the game now because there's a lot more people, and everyone wants to see, well, what's in it for me? How are you going to deliver value? How are you going to be different? So that's what I would say is one key thing. Second key thing, Joe, is business buyers do a lot of their research before they ever come and talk to you. So they're going to check you out. So your content is extremely important because as they hear about you, they're going to check you out. They want to see, do you really understand their industry? Do you understand their challenges? Can you deliver to them? They want to see what sort of footprint, what kind of reputation, what kind of credibility you have in the marketplace. So your content marketing and what you're doing to gain reach, visibility, credibility is so important now. So it's easier on one end, but it also means it just raises the bar in terms of what we have to do to be able to succeed. But you can do so, though.
Really good topics, man. I mean, because, when you talk about it, you're absolutely right. I can totally see that because on one end, it's easier for us to, create that LLC, grab a quick bank account, and then you're off, right?
Yeah.
Get some things going, but then trying to stay in that race is a totally different conversation.
Yes. Yeah.
SEO definitely still seems to be like a dominant first step. But
Yeah.
now, at least from what I'm hearing from a lot of my colleagues and myself, I'm even debating. Now we're looking at, okay, how do we get this organic play? Everyone's trying to tap into it.
Yeah.
B2B seems to be all LinkedIn heavy, but I mean, any other thoughts or recommendations about how to
So
get organic or how to kind of tap
absolutely,
into that?
Joe.
Yeah,
I personally believe, Joe, that okay, LinkedIn is good for gaining that reach and getting that awareness. That is how you and I have become connected, how we
absolutely.
became aware of each other. But really, to succeed in B2B, if you really want to have a sustainable, growing business, it involves going far more beyond that. You need to be doing online and offline. As your, big B2B is big dollars, big risk. So
Mm.
you need to still, while online has its place, you have to be prepared. I tell people, I tell clients, students that I teach, you have to be prepared to do that $1,000 meeting because sometimes, when you want someone to invest in your startup, in your solution, there is nothing more than you having a face-to-face discussion. And just by virtue of the fact that you're going to have that discussion, that you're going to get on a plane and you're willing to have that discussion, to have that meeting, that will separate you. And I will tell you, Joe, from my own experience, people take you seriously when you are prepared to spend money and travel halfway across the country. Heck, I've flown halfway across the world for a Startup Canada conference. Had my
Wow.
presence there. People take you seriously because then they know you mean business.
Hmm.
And it's when you have that discussion and dialogue, you can work through what are the issues, what are the hesitations, what's going to be required to deliver value to that prospective customer and client. So there is still a very big role for what you do in an online, offline standpoint. And again, it's all about demonstrating your value. How are you going to help your prospective clients and customers meet their objectives? So you constantly have to be delivering them information, insights, facilitating connections. It's all about that giving of value. You have to give value to get value. So yeah, so it's very much around content being helpful, engaging with your customers, and often you need to be prepared to do so in a face-to-face context.
I love the fact that you went like offline with that because I'm a big believer of getting face to face. I think it's one of the main separators, right? And
Yeah, and it's big in B2B. We're big dollars, we're big risks. Even if you're selling SMB to SMB, you're often requiring someone to take a risk on doing something, making a significant investment, a new way of doing business. There is still nothing more of getting all of those stakeholders in the room. And that's another thing, Joe, because in B2B, there are multiple people in the buying group. Nothing is more impactful of getting all of those people in the room and addressing all of their concerns and working through what needs to be done to build that consensus and come up with a solution to move things forward. And face-to-face is one of the best ways to do so.
oh man,
So
so
online has its place,
yeah.
but offline is still very important by the nature of what we're involved in the B2B space.
Man, that was like the perfect lead in so I can kind of pull some of the major jewels out of you because I've been listening to like a couple of different podcasts that you've been on, looking at your posts, and I feel like you are a master at dissecting a room and what people are really interested in. Could you help some of the actual audience understand how you go into a room with multiple people and then be able to address?
Sure. I guess it's just, I don't know, it's experienced a lot. One of the big things for me, anytime, even with my own consulting practice, and I very much try to practice what I preach, I
Mhm.
am very big on rounding up everyone who's involved in the decision. So not just the decision makers, but also those influencers. So those people that, the CEOs, the senior managers rely on to do their vetting of solutions. I am very big on getting everyone in the room because it's when you get in the room with them and I'm big on doing my research about those folks to understand what angle they're coming from. Some may be very strategic, very big picture. You have some that are very process, very operational focused, and they'll get into the detail around the processes. Your finance and your risk folk will be very much into numbers and what are those risks, what are those implications, and really just trying to zero in. And I will sometimes focus in on those people to say, what are your concerns, any feedback, any input. So really trying to round up everyone, not just the decision maker themselves, and trying to address all those concerns is quite important.
Do you have those conversations as like one-offs, or do you do them like with everyone literally at the same table at the same
I
time?
prefer to try to get everyone, if I can, try to get everyone in the room together,
Mhm.
because sometimes the members of the buying group can be coming from different angles. So let's say these chief marketing officer may be looking very strategic from one perspective, whereas your risk and compliance are looking at, okay, regulatory requirements. Do you meet these licensing and regulations? Your operations person may be all around service level agreements, process time. And so they themselves can be at odds. So bringing everyone in the room to making sure you're gaining consensus as to next steps, the way forward is quite important. Because if you don't try to help facilitate that, then things can break down the minute you walk the minute you walk out of the room.
100% agree. 100% agree, man. You know, unfortunately, I've kind of taken that beating a couple times where you go into the, in these meetings and you have these one-off conversations with one person and then you think everything's going great, and then a week and a half later once you try to circle back around or whatever that time frame is, and you're like, whoa, you guys aren't moving forward, or you guys found another partner, or however that looks, and then you're like, it feels like you've been like in a small car accident. You're like, what the hell happened there? you're like I thought we were going in the right direction, now we kind of came off the rails. So I think
So Joe, it's
that's a nice
happened to
team.
all of us. I have fallen victim to that in my earlier days, which is why I'm very big. And I will postpone meetings if I have to. Instead of doing a video conference, I need to get on a plane, and we need to alter and even delay, just to make sure that all those people are accounted for, just to avoid that. Because I've been involved in those train wrecks where you get your hopes up. You're thinking, oh, I met with the buyer and it's all good, and then you get the email 3 weeks later. Oh, and it's gone completely off course. It's been stalled. Been down that road. So yes, really trying to, where I can, get everyone together and in the room, because it's not just what people say, how they say it, their body language. You can
Mhm.
kind of tell, and that's where you get some of those cues that, oh, okay, finance person, not so, they're not convinced, and that's where, you can pick up those cues that you can't get by being on a phone call, or doing it, by email.
1000%, man. I mean, and one of the things I think a lot of us struggle with, and I'm kind of telling on myself here mainly, is that trying to separate ourselves from the competition or just the other options out there that
Yeah.
different startups can be, chosen from. It feels like one of the biggest advantages, but also one of the biggest struggles. The fact that we can niche down, but then also, are you niching in the right direction? How do you kind of, guide firms and
Yeah.
other
So in terms of,
startups through that?
So Joe, I have a few things to say on that. I think niching down and having a niche and a focus of an area that you have a lot of experience in, well, and you can deliver to, where you can provide those insights, advice, suggestions to those buyers to show that you really know their industry, you know their company, and you can really help them is quite important. And having that focus really helps you to stand out. So what you are known for. But
Right.
on the same token, we as entrepreneurs, SMB startups, need to be open and flexible to opportunity. So I would say have your focus from a marketing perspective, from building your skills and experience in a core area. But when you do get those, opportunities that come out of left field in other areas, be open to those. Because number one, we have to pay the bills, and we
Yeah.
need to have revenue. That's number one. But often, number two, you may find that by going into an area that's out of left field, you might be able to, business innovate your own business and identify, oh, there's an opportunity that I can leverage one or more of my offerings or my services that I can apply to this other area, which I didn't think of originally, and it could actually be a new source of income, a new area of focus. So market and position yourself to be known for a particular area, but be open to other opportunities, because it can definitely be beneficial, if nothing else, to smooth out the ebbs and flow of cash flow, but it
Yeah.
also can lead to other opportunities as well.
1000%, man. I mean, so any thoughts on how we could go about trying to come up with that insight, like that will say, hey, to the customer, Joe's known for X and Michael's known for, you know, Z and Y, so help us really try to separate ourselves. Any processes that you kind of play with, or different
So yeah,
methodologies that you kind of work with?
yeah. So Joe, look, it's really all about really, kind of reflecting, what I call listening. Reflecting. You need to be doing listening on 3 levels, as I call it. You need to be listening to you as the business owner, you as your business, knowing what are your strengths, what are you good at, where do you want to be going, to really be having clarity about that, and then aligning that with having an understanding of what are those industries, those verticals, those markets that you want to be going for, and those customers that you want to be going for, making sure you have a very clear understanding of what's going on in their world. What are their issues, what are their challenges, what are they trying to achieve, and then really be clear and know how you're going to deliver value to them. What problems are you going to help them solve, but also what objectives and goals you can help them to achieve, and really building your expertise, your knowledge, and building your value offerings around those things. So it does take doing a bit of homework. I love working with startups, but I do find often that they just want to jump to the sale and they don't want to do the work. But if you want to succeed in B2B, you have to do the work. And that's the bottom line. I'm going to be doing a short little video clip on LinkedIn on that tomorrow, because you have to go into any meeting, even a 15-minute coffee meeting, Joe, you must go in armed and ready. You cannot go in and ask a business owner, even a fellow SMB CEO, what keeps you up at night. No, you need to know what keeps them up at night, and then you need to be having suggestions, information, demonstrating how your solution is going to help deliver value to them. You have to go in as a peer to the CEO, as an advisor, which means you're well knowledgeable, well informed, and that's how you gain credibility when a prospective client can say, gee, this person, Joe, knows my company, he knows my market, he knows what's going on, and he's really adding value and helping me to achieve. And that comes with doing the legwork, and continue building your knowledge so that you really can deliver to that. So it's really about, really knowing your market, knowing your customers, and developing that expertise, really.
You know what? I mean, it is kind of crazy to kind of think about how much information is free flowing out there, especially if the person that you're trying to go after is making content like us, right?
Yeah.
If somebody wants to come and try to sell anything to me, I mean, it's all online already. I mean, like, exactly what I'm doing. Most people are pretty much telling them exactly what they want. And if not, I think it's great that you're bringing this up and talking about doing the work, because it is just it's the boring part of what most of us are into, right? It's not the fun presentations and closing deals and then cashing checks, right?
Joe, it's the boring part, but it's the most important part, because as you just rightly pointed out, everyone can go online and do their research, kind of get that top high level stuff. But it's when you are able to really go deeper, get into the detail, and being able to talk about, Mr. IT firms, issues around digital transformation, for an example. And you really can talk to the specifics of digital transformation in the context of their industry. Let's say it's travel, for example. And you can talk about some of the issues, the considerations, the complexities, the problem, and you can start talking about solutions and approaches. Is when you get into the detail, that's how you get cut through, that's how you get the sales, that's how you differentiate, that's how you win. Because you have to go deeper than just all the basic stuff that you can get on Google. I feel there's a lot of top of the funnel, a lot of intro level stuff on Google, which everyone tends to put out there and deliver. You have to go deeper now, and you have to be able to get into the detail and really have those kind of deep, meaningful discussions. And that's how, and you need to demonstrate that at every point of contact with a prospective customer or client.
Man, I think it's heavy. I mean, because honestly, it is what separates us, right? I mean, what kind of motivates you to kind of really press in like this? Because I feel like so many business owners that I talk to, I'm just being transparent now, is that they're just looking at the top of the funnel stuff, and they share stuff with me that's like a general stat that we all know. It's like, man, I've seen this 1,000 times today. I mean, or it's like some motivational quote where it's like, hey, work harder because, that's how you persevere. And which is, it's nice, but like, what motivated you to kind of press in like this into each and every, interaction that you're having with your prospects or clients?
I guess it's a combination of a few things, Joe. I spent many of my years pre-consulting in big corporate, and big corporate provided me a lot of learnings and a lot of skills. But it also demonstrated to me the opportunity how, well, no disrespect, but a lot of you big corporate folk don't really deliver that well. And there are a lot of us smaller folk that, we, should be having a seat at the table, a seat in the boardroom.
Hmm.
But it's about, making sure you know how to navigate, how to get into those big organizations, how they think, how they operate. So it's just really, I guess, part of my, purpose, in terms of really wanting to see my fellow peeps, wanting them to succeed, because it's ripe with opportunity, where yeah, a lot of startups, a lot of SMBs are fantastic, brilliant people, really good at what they do, and could deliver so much value to the bigger end of town, and just wanting them to be able to succeed. But you have to know how to succeed. And that means, putting in the work on both the fun stuff and the not so fun stuff.
I mean, well, honestly, that's how the big guys really just become big, is because they have done the work in the past, at least at one point, right? So they can
Yeah.
kind of so they can properly scale up. And I think you bring that insight, knowing how it is on the other side of the table as well, that a lot
Yes.
of guys who haven't been there probably are just kind of clueless on how to get there, you know?
Yeah, it takes, because you have to, one of the key things, as you would well know, Joe, that in B2B, buyers and users are not one and the same. And it's
Mhm.
a simple distinction, but it's quite fundamental, particularly as you're getting into larger, more complex organizations, because it could be your senior managers, your VPs and directors that are part of the buying group, but they may never see nor use your AI or machine learning offering, but they have KPIs that they have to report to shareholders, to the board, to the fellow senior exec that they need to deliver to. And it's all about you understanding what are their objectives, motivators, and drivers, and delivering to that. It's not just about the technology. And you really need to give a justification as to why I should switch from doing what I'm doing currently and why I should buy from you. It's not just enough to have a solution that's great technology and shows you have the brain the size of a planet, but why would I want to buy? Joe, you laugh, but I do find and I've worked now just within the last 9 months, I've probably worked with more than 60, 70 startups from around the world. And I
Wow.
do find a lot of them come with great features and technology, but why would I want to buy this? What's going to make me switch? You need to recognize that in big organizations, they have current ways of doing things. It might be as manual as using spreadsheets, but if you want someone to switch and to pay for it, there needs to be some significant value as why I want to switch from the way I'm doing things now, from whatever solution products I'm using, to something else. There needs to be value, and the value is just not because it's whatever technology or methodology. It has to tie to much deeper purposes around strategic objectives, financial objectives, operational objectives, and you have to make it easy for them to undertake that as well. Because if it's going to be painful for me to take on your solution, Joe, to integrate it, onboard it, training, I'll be like, you know what? I didn't know about you 30 minutes before this meeting. I'll just keep doing what I'm doing. And that is something that sounds very simple, but it's quite critical when you're looking to go into organization and you want to sell. How are you delivering value? And would I want to pay for it? Just because it's a better technology, a better way of doing things, does it justify the costs and the pain of having to switch and come up with new processes, new integrations, all those kinds of things? Is it really worth doing so just because, well, it's, AI, machine learning, it's some new methodology?
You know what? I really love that question, because a lot of times everyone's trying to sell change, right? I mean,
Yeah.
especially in B2B, we're all trying to get someone out of the status quo. Normally, everybody has a method, whether it's using Excel sheets over like using somebody else's fancy CRM. Yeah, I mean, like there's all type of, even though you may think that's out of date, I don't want to write it down anymore. I want to use something, but pain of change, right? There's a
Yes.
pain with that. I mean, even
Yes.
just mentally, even though you may think it's a flip of the switch and give me your email and we're good,
Yeah.
there is a mental block to why people don't want to move forward with things.
Yeah.
And I think it's really good that you brought that up, because it's not an easy process for most people.
Yeah, it's not, because it's not only just the mental change. Quite often, and particularly in larger organizations, there are going to be a number of steps. You want me to switch from using one CRM system to another. Okay, there are system changes. We've got to communicate to various teams. Your strategic partners may need to be involved. Legal and compliance needs to be involved.
Sure.
So I'm going to do all of this because of what? You have to demonstrate what is the value, the business value of undertaking that, which usually I say revolves around what I call the big three, usually broadly around increasing revenues, decreasing costs and risks, increasing productivity, increasing customer retention and satisfaction. You need to be speaking around those one or more of those very three broad categories to get people's attention as to why I should really consider moving from what I'm doing now.
I like that big three, man, because you're absolutely right. Anytime I can uncover any of those type of like motivations, normally those things start to unravel a lot easier, opposed
Yes.
to, you know, if we're kind of shooting darts in the dark and really hoping that I can hit one of those three, you know? Um,
Yeah.
you know, I want to pivot a little bit. I want to talk about your book, man. So
Oh,
listen, innovate, grow. I mean,
yes.
because, all right, so first off, how long did it take to come out with a book? Because I've been struggling to kind of put together some of my thoughts. So help me.
Okay, so Joe, first of all, okay, so the book, which I wrote with my good friend and colleague, Gareth Chandler. So we wrote the book, it took us about 18 months from the time we had the first whiteboarding session at his house in the basement till it actually was published, was about 18 months. Writing a book, Joe, I will also say the key to having a great book, taking a book from good to great, is you need to have a really good editor and publisher, and getting a good structural edit, and you need to get that professionally done, regardless whether you're going to self-publish or not. Yeah, so those are some of the key tips. I'm happy to talk to you offline to get in some of the nuances about that. So the book, Listen, Innovate, Grow, Joe, it's all stemming back to my motivation to really helping startups and SMBs succeed in the world of B2B. Because I found when I started looking into this around 2016, 2017, you tend to have this dichotomy. So in terms of B2B books, most of the B2B books are very much aimed at big corporate, and they speak the language of big corporate. We talk segmentation, net promoter scores, customer value analysis, all that big corporate stuff. And then the SMB startup books I found to be rather basic, talking about the 4 Ps of marketing, very high level things. But a lot of those, in-depth concepts, account-based strategies, how to create customer-driven solutions, a lot of those things are in the big end of town, are fully applicable to startups and SMBs, and they need to be getting into the detail and learning those more advanced approaches to be able to build, scale, and grow successful businesses. So it was that gap in the market that prompted Gareth and myself to write the book. So the book is called Listen, Innovate, Grow, because those are the 3 fundamental activities that startups and SMBs need to be doing to have sustainable high growth businesses. So listening is all about gaining that in-depth, and I have to stress that, Joe, in-depth understanding about you, the business owner, and your business. So your vision, your purpose, what are you good at? What are your strengths, your capabilities, your resources? Innovation is about business innovation. So innovation is all about, the definition of innovation is about new introductions and or improvements. And to be a high growth firm, which has 20% annual growth over 3 years or more, you need to business innovate across 5 dimensions. So I talk about how you innovate across product, service, process, marketing, and organizational innovation. And firms that innovate in 2 areas or more above product are the ones that have that sustainable, profitable growth. So we go into that in detail, which is basically how you win. So listening tells you where to focus in the market in terms of what industries, what markets, what customers. Innovation is how you win. So what are the areas across those 5 dimensions that you can introduce new ways of doing things, improving things. And then growth is all about how do you grow and manage the growth. So looking at people, culture, managing your finances. So yeah, so that's Listen, Innovate, Grow, which we put together in a framework called the Listen, Innovate, Grow B2B framework. So that's fundamentally it, really.
Love it, man. Love it, man. So talking about listening, because I think it's it's powerful, but very few of us really tap into it. What's a great question if you're working with any startup and you want to understand how their customers view them, or really try to understand what's the business value that business is bringing? What's a great question to help kind of pull out some of those jewels from some of your customers that maybe you ought to ask, or maybe some other founders ought to be asking as well?
Okay, so yeah, so in terms of listening, listening is very, very important. It's
Mm-hmm.
something that all businesses, big businesses tend to do lots of listening, so they invest lots of research and so forth, but they tend not to use it. For those of us in the smaller end of town, we don't do enough listening. So listening is really all about, getting into some meaningful discussion and dialogue with your customers and your prospects. And there's a series of questions that you want to be asking them, as you're meeting your prospective customers, your prospective buyers. You want to understand, what are some of their key objectives, what are their key challenges, how are they being remunerated, what are some of the key problems that they're currently experiencing right now, how are they dealing with and addressing those problems and or challenges. What would it take to make them change, to do something better? What would they be looking for in alternatives in terms of doing, running their business better, doing particular functions better, what have you? What would be the impact of doing those as well? So there's a whole series of questions that you want to be asking. And Joe, I just want to call out that listening, getting that understanding around your customers, your market, it's an ongoing thing. It's not something that you do as a one-off.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that you want to continually be doing. And the listening will be through both a combination of doing some of your research, so reading your industry reports, those kinds of things. But a lot of it's about getting out there into the ecosystem. So, getting involved with your industry and your professional associations, going to the conferences, going to the meetup groups, leveraging your contacts on LinkedIn, outreaching to prospective customers, having those discussions. So it's an ongoing process, but as you're capturing and getting that information, it's feeding that information back into your startup, into your SMB, across all the various stakeholders. So it will define what you're doing around your business strategy, sales, operations, strategic partnerships, the whole works. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Oh, 100%, 100%. I mean, and talking about conferences too, like, because I know that's a place where you kind of play around a lot, it seems like, and you also get on birds and kind of travel around the whole globe to like different conferences. Do you have any ones that you love right now? Are there any conferences that are like
No,
home run
look,
hitters?
Joe, a couple things about conferences. Conferences, yeah. I would love to go to more of them. Conferences are great because they're great from a number of perspectives. One, if you
It's a
can
great business too
participate.
to start hosting
Yeah,
those conferences as well. But
yeah,
sorry.
yes. So conferences are really great for startups and SMBs from a number of perspectives. One, if you can get involved in the conferences, in terms of conducting one of the pre or post conference workshops, speaking, that is a great way to showcase what you know and the value that you can bring. And that is a great way to really attract your prospective customers. And the Content Marketing Institute there in the US just did a study, and live events is the #1 way to secure leads and convert leads. So, so there is data there to demonstrate, again, offline, the value of face-to-face. Being in front of people, that is a great form of lead generation. So it's good from that perspective. But just getting out and being able to speak to people in the industry, to build your knowledge about the industry, to identify prospective customers, identify your competitors. Conferences are a great way to really build your learning and knowledge of what's going on. And even if you can't go to the conferences, I always tell folks, well, print off the agendas of those conferences, because by seeing who's there, you can find out who your competition is, who are some of the industry leaders you may want to identify, who are your prospective competitors. So conferences are great for, if you can get involved with them, great way for lead generation and to get that reach and visibility. But it's also a great way to build your listening and build your knowledge. So yeah, really, I'm a big advocate of conferences.
Love it, man. I mean, so do you have any favorite conferences stateside that you're looking at going to this year?
There's a few B2B conferences in the US. You guys have a lot of great conferences over there. There's a few B2B ones in particular that I want to get over to. Then there are a few colleagues, Jeff Davis and a few others are doing a lot of work around the whole account-based marketing, account-based strategy space.
Yeah.
So so a lot of the leading thinkers and doers in the B2B space, Sangram Vadri, Jeff Davis, there's a whole slew of you folks over there that are doing a lot of great things. You've got the folks over at the B2B Growth Show. So I'm always looking to tap in and engage and interact with you folks over there, because you guys are really on the cusp of what's new, what's interesting, and always keen to see what we can take and apply to the smaller end of town. So yeah, lots of good stuff going on in the US all the time.
Well, I mean, honestly, we also steal a ton from Aussie land as well, man. I have several startups that I've worked with in the past, and they're doing great work out here, tech startups, but they're out of like Sydney. So I'm like,
Yeah.
There's a lot of give and take coming on both sides of the coast, right?
Absolutely. The world has become a smaller place on a level. There's just a lot of exchange of information, dialogue, people moving back and forth. So there's lots of opportunities out there for all of us, I think. But you just have to think from the perspective of the business customer, from the perspective of the business buyer. And that's very, very important, that you are delivering to buyer needs, not just user needs, and you have that depth of understanding. And that's really, that's the key to success. That's how you stand out, by showing that you really have that depth of knowledge and how you can add value. Because you've got to give value to get value, even from your initial contact with a prospect. Send them a piece of, some white paper, some article, a video. And again, it's about giving value to them to help them and to show that you really, know their world, know their industry, their issues. That is the key to cutting through.
Account-based marketing. Can we talk about that for a little bit?
Go for it. Sure.
so yeah, please.
Okay, so account-based marketing, which I don't really like the term.
Yeah.
I see that Jeff. I'm going to quote Jeff Davis and his book. Jeff calls it account-based strategy, and I fully agree with him that it should be called account-based strategy, because marketing, as much as I love the discipline, and it's fundamentally where I did my MBA, I do a lot of training up in the US in that area. People have a very siloed view around marketing, and they think, it's social media, it's branding, and it's about working cross-functionally. Account-based marketing, account-based strategy, it's working cross-functionally, holistically across the organization. So it's with products, operations, customer service and support, or customer success as they call it, client services. It's all of those teams, your marketing, your data team, all of them working together to deliver to the needs of those strategic key customers and prospects that you've identified. So I joined Jeff's. I'm on Jeff's bandwagon, and I prefer the term account-based strategy, because it's a holistic approach. But yeah, the general term is ABM. But it's a way, Joe, I think all organizations, irrespective of your big end of town or small end of town, you should be adopting that on some level. Even as a startup and SMB, you probably have some, key initial customers that you'd really like to get. And so it's about really focusing in on those customers, understanding them well, having a deep understanding of the company, i.e. the customer, of the buyers involved, identifying who you need to engage within those prospects, and then developing, what's your engagement plan to deliver them the right kind of content. Are you going to have workshops, meetings for them? What kind of content you're going to put on your website? So really having a structured plan of how you're really going to zero in and try to tap into those key targets, and holistically identify other opportunities and work in a coordinated approach as you're approaching company X. And you might have 2 or 3 different points of entry, but how you're going to work in a coordinated fashion. So and it's a way I think a lot of all companies really need to be engaging in it on some level. The latest stats, I think, show that in terms of lead generation, there's a lot of focus around lead generation. Only 1% of leads actually turn into actual customers. So wow. There's a need now that you really need to start taking a more holistic approach, a customer approach, and account approach to really gain the cut through and penetration. And the studies have shown that account-based marketing, when you do it, can lead to greater cross-sell, upsell, greater overall customer lifetime value. So yeah, it's really looking holistically, and it's doing that deep dive and really understanding your customers, those target customers, and really having a plan towards those.
Yeah. Totally get why you kind of use that actual terminology instead, because you're right. I mean, marketing is kind of gets in this tunnel vision type of thing of, okay, we're putting up billboards or we have email campaigns, and it's so much more. It's every touch that you have with the actual customer almost, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
just from every level, how you present yourself, I mean, so when we think about it, are there any good software or tools that you used around that ABM strategy
look, there are a whole array of various marketing automation tools that you can be used. And as you're getting bigger, to be able to do it at scale. My big thing, I'll be quite honest with you, Joe, I'm very big on really organizations coming from, I'm looking at the initial stages of just in terms of their thinking and approach, in terms of identifying who should be your target customers, and getting that deep dive, that depth of understanding, and start building some of your plans of engagement first. That's where I feel, particularly for startups and SMBs, they really need to really be getting their heads around that in terms of, having that depth of understanding, getting very targeted in terms of what customers, who are the people involved, and then what are we going to be doing to engage and interact with those. The technology will enable you to scale, but I think sometimes there's too much focus on jumping to technology and how we automate things, as opposed to, I'm very big about getting the fundamentals right, because I believe even a startup, if you've got, company X and company Y that you want to get into, well, then you need to focus and say, take an account-based approach, say, well, how are we going to deliver value to them? Who do we need to engage? How are we going to engage? And start building out a plan around that.
That's a good point. I mean, because I think I saw just some number that was like 1,500 brand new type of like B2B sales tech type of platforms out there that's kind of floating around. And
Yeah.
every time I'm looking for a brand new piece of like tech, I can get lost in this rabbit hole, and then I'm trying to
Yeah.
compare all the rest of them.
Yeah.
And then you wasted like a good 2 to 3 hours when you could have just been doing some work on some pen and pad, or even just
Yeah.
like a basic, you know, Excel sheet. So yeah, I think
Exactly.
that's great.
But it's what goes into that Excel sheet, Joe. It's all about, it's about, being strategic, having that plan, going deep to really understand that target customer, that company that you're going after, to really understand them and who's involved and who you're going to engage with. That's really where the focus needs to be.
Well, so you know what? We are getting ready to wrap up, but because you are an actual author right now, I have to ask you,
Yeah.
what's some of your favorite books right now, as far as for B2B guys looking to grow?
Favorite for B2B guys, I would say Jeff Davis, Create Togetherness, which he
Okay.
just recently released. A really, really good book around account-based strategy, is really, really good. I also just got Sangram Vajra's, I hope I'm pronouncing his name right, ABM is B2B. That's
Okay.
another really good book. That's really, very, very good. James Carberry's book, which I have here on my desk, Content-Based Networking, is absolutely fantastic. And
I
I
just
do
finished
think,
that book too. Yeah, it's good. I like it.
I think it's
Simple read, but effective, right?
yeah, it's an easy read, but it's very effective because it's a great way to really cut through and make those contacts with anybody that you want to be meeting in terms of prospective customers. And interviewing them, leveraging them as it's a fantastic prospecting strategy as part of your marketing. So I really think that's really good. And then there's a gentleman, Stu Heineke, How to Get a Meeting with Anyone. So he talks about contact marketing. That's another book that I think really for startups and SMBs, looking at as part of their marketing and prospecting strategies. I think those are two books that folks should use, because I find, Joe, there's a little bit too much emphasis around, leveraging our personal networks. And to build and grow, you have to go beyond your network. So you have to have strategies and tactics on how to do so. And so James' book and Stu's book are two good books in terms of giving you some ideas of how you can get reach and crack into those that you don't know. Because ultimately, you're going to have to do that if you want to grow and scale.
Yeah. You know what's so funny? So, I've been podcasting for like a couple of years now, and one of the best things I've done, and I'm getting back to it this year. That's why I'm going to a couple more conferences, even though with the virus kind of thrown off some of my plans.
Yeah.
but literally going to these conferences, looking up all the speakers, and then asking them just to come on your actual podcast, because
Yes.
they already got a whole speech ready. Like they already know they already have an expertise. They already have great content lined up for you, just how you guys brought this audience today. I mean, it's the easiest thing in the world, and they're probably looking for more exposure. So it's always a hell yeah.
They're always looking for more exposure. They're always looking for more exposure, more contacts to build their reach. So those are, it's absolutely great ways. It's almost a no-brainer. It's like, gee, but it's really effective and it does work. Because if you're afraid of, approaching a CEO or something, give them the opportunity to talk about themselves, showcase them, their company. Because I have tried it and it does work. Yeah, you'd be amazed at how, sure, they make time in their diaries. So yeah, it really does work.
Yeah, man. I mean, I've become a huge believer of it. I mean, the only rub is not to make it cheesy, right? Like to where you don't go into like after the interview into an immediate sales pitch to what you want to get off your chest and talking to them about.
Well, it
But
should never be, the whole interaction should never be about selling. It should be
right.
all about them, showcasing them. You might ask questions to help enhance learning for the audience, but there should be no selling involved in the engagement whatsoever. That's where folks often go wrong. They do the initial engagement and then the sale comes right on the back end of it.
Right.
And then that just negates everything. All right.
Yeah.
There can be no selling involved whatsoever. And you just make it about that mutual exchange of information of value. Then eventually, the sale will come.
Got to be patient with it, right? Got to be
Yes,
patient.
and that's something I find many folks don't have. But yeah, B2B is a long game. There can be great benefits in terms of large revenues, long-term relationships, all of those things. But B2B is a long game. And if you're looking to make the quick initial sale, it just doesn't work anymore. Yeah, it doesn't work.
Man, I think that's a perfect place for us to kind of put a nice bow on this. So you have to tell everyone how to find you. And of course, like, please tell them how to find the book as well, because I have to get my hands on it.
Okay, so sure. So to get in touch with me, you can always connect with me on LinkedIn because I'm there all the time, especially Monday to Fridays. But you go to my website, listeninnovategrow.com. So there you'll find an array of articles, videos, there's templates. I've just actually put out a new toolkit on customer acquisition and retention. It's a free toolkit to help you plan out how do you identify your customers and planning out how do you engage with them, develop content for them. So that's a free download you can get there. You can also get free chapters of some samples of the book from listeninnovategrow.com, which is available on Kindle and available from Amazon as well.
Awesome, man. Awesome. So, you know what, Michael, I really do thank you just for coming on to Action Podcast. Thank you for all the jewels. And I look forward to really staying in touch. And, what you're doing on
Absolutely.
LinkedIn is powerful, man. Keep it up, man.
Thank you so much. This has been great fun.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mike.